Andrei gradually regained consciousness, realizing that someone was shaking him and using offensive language. Despite this, he remained silent, unsure of his surroundings or the identity of the person pulling him down. In the distance, he faintly heard a voice inquire, "Hey, what are you doing here at this hour?" "The last bus left here ages ago." The urgency in the person's voice led them to call for an ambulance, which soon arrived with blaring sirens and flashing lights. As Andrei was loaded into the ambulance, he was covered with a blanket that carried a distinct medicinal scent. It was at this moment that the pain struck him with an intense force. His head throbbed mercilessly, each pulsation seemingly synchronized with his heartbeat. Desperate for some respite, he attempted to regulate his breathing, hoping it might provide even the briefest moment of relief. As the pain overwhelmed him, he struggled to identify his surroundings. However, his strength failed him, preventing him from opening his eyes. Amidst the agony, Andrew found himself plagued by a persistent and maddening humming and whistling in his head. He was acutely aware of the rhythmic thumping of his own heartbeat and the pulsating rush of blood in his carotid artery. Before long, the car came to a stop, and he was carefully lifted and transported to an unfamiliar location, recognizable solely by the distinct scent of a hospital. He became aware of the medical staff attending to him, stripping him of his clothes, measuring his blood pressure, administering an injection. Subsequently, he found himself secured onto a gurney and transported to the highest floor via an elevator. With his hands swathed in bandages and rendered immobile, Andrei felt an unsettling numbness consuming his body. Slowly, he began to descend into the depths of a murky abyss. Upon regaining consciousness, Andrei found himself surrounded by a jumbled mess of wires and tubes, all connected to a mysterious computer. As the computer detected Andrei's awakening, it sent an alert to the nurse, who promptly arrived in the room, accompanied by the doctor. With a warm smile, the doctor spoke. "We managed to locate your cell phone, which was miraculously unblocked. We contacted the subscriber listed as wife, and she arrived at the hospital approximately 2 hours after you were admitted. She had been waiting at an out-of-service bus stop." Confusion washed over Andrei as he struggled to recall how he had ended up at the bus stop, dressed inappropriately for the weather. It perplexed him why he had been sitting on that bench, anticipating a bus that hadn't been operational for a considerable duration. Despite all this, he knew his car was parked safely in the yard, and his warm jacket lay untouched there. Slowly, the events leading to his bewildering behavior began to resurface in his memory, aligning the puzzle pieces. Just as realization dawned on him, Andrei's wife burst into the room, unleashing her frustration at his irrational and senseless actions. In that moment, everything clicked into place, and he vividly recollected the significant events he had encountered on that fateful day. It was an ordinary Friday for Andrei, who was at work. The day was going smoothly until around 11 o'clock, when a transformer blew. Consequently, the bosses made the decision to send the workers home, as it was deemed unnecessary for them to stay in the workshops. Around 12 o'clock, Andrei parked his car and headed up to his apartment. As he entered the parking lot, Andrei noticed his old school friend Igor's car. Over the years, they had become close family friends. Andrei's daughter, Katya, had been friends with Igor and Alina's daughter for 12 years, as they were in the same class. After school, the girls often gathered at Igor's apartment to do their homework together. It was worth noting that Igor's wife held a job as a saleswoman in a shopping center. Ignoring the fact that Igor's car was parked in the lot that belonged to their house, Andrei proceeded to enter the entrance and make his way up to his floor. Using his own key, he unlocked the door, fully aware that his wife was not present and must be at work. Stepping into the corridor, he unexpectedly overheard a hushed conversation originating from the bedroom between his wife Susan and his friend Igor. "Susan, my time is limited today. I have a plan to execute, and I believe we should get down to business, don't you? Moreover, I find myself yearning to spend more time with you," Igor proposed. "Igor, you are truly disappointing me. Our rendezvous can only happen once a week, on Fridays, and even then, it's only once a month. The other days are consumed by my obligations, work, and taking care of our daughter. Furthermore, you need to consider that our children are growing older and wiser, Susan retorted. I apologize, but we must exercise caution moving forward. Today, I have a plan to discuss. My presence here is based on the understanding that Andrei may not be the best fit for you. Igor, that's not accurate. Andrei is a perfect match for me. I'm still bewildered about how we ended up in that situation. It's disappointing that you, my best friend, would put us in such a position. Please refrain from berating him. Perhaps you're right, and I should feel ashamed, but I don't. It's because my feelings for you have persisted for a long time. If you had asked, I would have left Elena for you. I love you and want to be there for you, even though my availability is currently limited to weekdays. I understand your love for Andrei, but my feelings for you surpass those for him. Andrei couldn't bear to witness what was happening in the adjacent bedroom, so he quickly turned away and left. In his haste, he forgot to grab his warm jacket from the car. He walked aimlessly towards the highway, eventually coming across a defunct bus stop. With a heavy heart, he took a seat on the vacant bench. Time seemed to stand still as he sat there, oblivious to the passing cars, pedestrians, and the biting cold. He remained lost in his thoughts until late in the evening, when a vigilant police patrol noticed him and called for medical assistance. Now, lying in bed with his eyes closed, Andrei appeared unresponsive to his surroundings. Having returned to the realm of the living, he needed time to process everything and come to a decision. This explained why he ignored Susan, despite understanding that this could not continue indefinitely. As Andrei lay in his hospital bed, the woman who had broken their wedding vows stood beside him, her voice filled with concern. Andrei, you had me so worried. You didn't call or come home. Why did you end up freezing at the bus stop? What's going on with you? Andrei, exhausted and fed up with everything, simply turned away and fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, he awoke, his mind filled with questions about what had gone wrong. He never noticed any signs of trouble in Susan's behavior. After becoming a mother, Susan had chosen to stay at home with their daughter, Katya, until she turned 3. During that time, she had a significant amount of free time. Susan sometimes used it to go shopping or watch movies with her friends when Katya started going to kindergarten. Occasionally, they would all go out in the evenings to watch a movie at the theater. They would often spend holidays together with Igor and Alina. Andrei found himself waking up once again, only to be greeted by the nurse who was there to administer his medication. As he looked around, he noticed that Susan was nowhere to be found. The doctor stepped into the room and informed him that his discharge papers had been signed, allowing him to go home. However, he advised Andrei to wait for transportation as he was dressed lightly, suggesting that his wife might be able to arrange it. Andrei admitted, "I don't know where she is." The doctor expressed his regrets, explaining that they couldn't keep him at the hospital as he wasn't their patient anymore, and recommended that he see a psychologist. Just as the doctor left, the nurse, who had overheard the conversation, added, "I tried calling the numbers your wife left, but I couldn't reach anyone. It just went to voicemail." Just then, Edward, the shop foreman, entered the room with a cheerful greeting. "Ah, there you are, Andrei." Astonished, Andrei asked, "Edward, how did you?" Edward interrupted, saying, "Well, my wife works in the emergency room. She told me they brought you in during her shift, so I thought I'd come and pay you a visit. I've been released from the hospital, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get home. Don't worry, I can give you a ride. By the way, when are you planning on going back to work?" "I think I'll make a doctor's appointment on Monday, and then I'll get some rest until Wednesday." Andrei and Edward talked for about 20 minutes. Andrei told what had happened to him and how he ended up in the hospital. Edward replied, "You are lucky to have such a good friend. I would be in jail if I were you, and my daughter would be alone because she would not put up with it. What are you going to do in this situation?" "I'll think about what to do, but the first thing I'll do is talk to Susan." The nurse returned with the paperwork, apologizing for the delay due to it being the weekend. However, she made an exception for the patient's discharge. About 40 minutes later, Andrei arrived at the house. Edward bid farewell, assuring him to call anytime if needed, and made his way up to the floor, entering the apartment. To his surprise, only his daughter was home. Curious, he asked her if she wasn't at her girlfriend's tonight. She responded by explaining that her girlfriend and mother went to her grandmother's for the weekend and would return late tonight. Edward then inquired about his wife's whereabouts, and his daughter informed him that she had some errands to run and would visit him at the hospital around 6 o'clock tonight. "Sure, I'll get ready quickly so we can head to the mall together. We can take a leisurely walk, explore different stores, and even have a nice break at a cafe," the daughter excitedly suggested. "That sounds fantastic. Let's get going," replied Andre. Soon enough, they set off towards the mall. They spent a delightful afternoon there, and by 7 o'clock in the evening, they returned home. The daughter was bursting with excitement, but upon entering the house, Susan immediately voiced her frustration. "Andre, why didn't you inform me that you were discharged from the hospital?" Andre sighed and replied, "The hospital staff called both the home phone and your cell phone, but unfortunately, you didn't answer. All the calls went to voicemail, and when I tried to call back, the battery on my phone died. Additionally, I went to the salon this morning, so I wasn't home. My daughter approached me and reminded me of my promise to review her homework. 'Daddy, you promised to check how I did my homework,' she said. I reassured her, 'Of course, I'm coming.' We went into the room, and unexpectedly, she asked, 'Daddy, is everything okay with Mom?' I responded, 'Everything is fine with me, my daughter. You don't need to worry about anything.' I went ahead and checked her homework, noticing its neatness and correctness. Afterwards, we relaxed and watched some TV. As Katia started to fall asleep while hugging me, I carried her to her room and tucked her into bed. When I returned, Susan mentioned that she needed to get some sleep as she was returning to work on Monday. Wondering if she was going to the clinic, I asked, 'Aren't you going to the clinic?' She replied, 'Not yet.' Concerned, I inquired, 'Tell me, what happened to you? What should I be prepared for? Did the doctors prescribe any pills?' She reassured me, 'Nothing serious. I'll be ready soon and we'll talk. Tonight, I'll sleep separately because I have restless sleep, and it's better for me to sleep alone.' In fact, Andre came to the realization that she had deceived him. He pondered over what he truly wanted and which steps were necessary to secure his own and his daughter's future. He no longer felt invested in Susan's future. The next morning, Andre rose before dawn, taking a shower and leaving the house before Susan and Katia woke up. He started his car and drove to work. Upon entering the workplace locker room, he was met with a buzz of excitement as his colleagues shared stories of their enjoyable weekends. Unbeknownst to them, Andre had recently spent time in the hospital. The workshop foreman, Edward, approached him cautiously, asking, "Are you considering taking time off for overtime? Edward will probably forget about it soon, and you won't receive any benefits from working extra hours." Andre responded, "I thought there were orders to fulfill." Edward sighed and said, "Andre, we've been working together for days. You're aware that the maximum overtime hours permitted per year is 120. You're already getting close to that limit. Write a request for time off, and I don't want to see you here for a week." Andre expressed his gratitude to Edward, after which he decided to seek help from a psychologist. However, in order to make an appointment, Andre had to make a phone call. Having agreed on a day off, Andre started the car and drove home. Suddenly, the phone rang, and he saw that it was his sister Dasha. He answered the call and said, "Dasha, I'm here." "What's wrong?" Dasha asked. "Andre, is it true that you spent the weekend in the hospital?" A surprised Andre inquired, "How did you find out about that?" Dasha explained that Katia had informed her by talking to her at a nearby gym where the first place competition was being held tomorrow. Andre confirmed that he knew about the competition, but assured Dasha that he felt better. Then he told about what had happened to him. On Friday, there was a fire at the power transformer at the substation where I work. As a goodwill gesture, the supervisors allowed us to go home early. When I got home, I found Susan in bed with my best friend Igor in our bedroom. They didn't see me, and instead of confronting them, I quietly left. The shock was so severe that I lost consciousness, and the police found me unconscious. As a result, I had to spend the night in the hospital, but the only thing I had was a slight hypothermia. Now I have been discharged, I have taken a vacation, and am returning home. It's hard to believe that Susan would do something like this. I always thought you and her had a perfect marriage. Tasha, I was just as shocked as you. It really took me by surprise, and it has left me feeling overwhelmed. Right now, I need some time to figure out what I'm going to do and how to take care of myself. I understand, but please be careful not to do anything that could harm you. What kind of things do you mean? Well, sometimes in situations like this, it's helpful to seek advice from professionals. I have a friend named Christina who is a highly experienced divorce lawyer. She's very knowledgeable and respected in our city and even beyond. I can reach out to her and see if she would be able to speak with you. So she's like a counselor or therapist. Will I need to make an appointment with her? No, she's a lawyer specializing in divorce cases. She's in high demand, but I'll try to arrange a call for you. Andre decided to wait for his sister to call. When she finally called back, she informed him, Christina is waiting for you in the office. It's located in the center, and it's the only one there. Andre replied, I know, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Does she still have the same last name? Yes, the sister replied. She hasn't gotten married yet. After receiving this information, Andre quickly found Christina's office and noticed her last name on one of the doors. He knocked and heard her say, Come in. As Andre entered the office, he saw Christina sitting at a large desk with papers spread out in front of her. She pointed to a chair and said, Sit down, let's talk. I have a new client in 20 minutes, by appointment. Andre shared with Christina the events that had unfolded. The mention of his childhood friend, Igor, surprised her, as she recalled him being much more honest in the past. Curiosity drove her to ask a pressing question. Do you still want to keep your family together? Andre responded, his focus on their daughter Katia. Yes, I do. It's for Katia's sake. Christina acknowledged Katia's adulthood and posed another question, probing Andre's ability to raise her alone. If she stays with you, do you feel confident in handling her upbringing? With confidence, Andre replied, I believe I can. I will do my best. Pleased with Andre's determination, Christina proceeded with her advice. Great. Let's try to salvage your family. Start by communicating directly with your wife, without any hints or outside interference. Find a time when it's just the two of you. Andre agreed, committing to take action that day. All right, I'll do it today. However, Christina warned of the possibility of a different outcome. If things don't work out, divorce may be inevitable, but securing custody of Katia might not be guaranteed by the court, although her input will be considered. To provide ongoing support, Christina presented her business card, ensuring accessibility. Here's my card. It includes my phone numbers, as well as an additional one I personally answer 24/7. After getting some more advice on how to behave, Andre said goodbye and left the office. When he got home, he realized that he needed to talk to Susan before Katia returned, as she was supposed to be at her friend's house during the day. Susan had important information that Andre needed, and he could only count on her. Once inside, Andre noticed that Igor's car was once again parked in the parking lot nearby. He couldn't fathom that Susan had allowed Igor to return to the apartment after his recent hospitalization. Frustration stirred in Andre's soul, and he sat down in the car to gather his wits. If he caught them together again, Andre was ready to confront Igor, even if it meant resorting to violence. Gaining his strength, he got out of the car and headed towards his house. Upon entering the house, Andre found Susan in the kitchen, who had tearfully lowered herself onto Igor's shoulder. Apparently, Igor was just there to comfort her. Andrew, overwhelmed with anger and confusion, turned to Igor and asked, "What are you doing in my apartment during the day, Igor? You always said you had to work for a living, but your car is idling on the street." "Igor, it's good to see you," Andre greeted as he pulled away from Susan. "I apologize for not visiting you in the hospital. I hope you're doing better." Susan quickly interjected, her tone concerned. "Andre, aren't you supposed to be at work? I was so worried about everything that happened, and Igor came to check on you." Andrei glanced at Igor, puzzled. "How did you know I wouldn't be at work? Why didn't you call either of us to see how we're doing? Did your phone's battery die too?" Igor shook his head. "No, it was just a coincidence. I wasn't paying attention to my phone." Susan's worry heightened. What if there was an emergency order from the dispatcher? Andrei reassured her. "I'm not the only one in the trucking business. Someone else would have taken the order." "Igor, I appreciate your concern for Susan, but for now, I'd appreciate it if you could give us some space to talk," Andrei requested. "You don't need to bother yourself right now. I'll catch up with you later." Igor nodded understandingly. "Of course. I'll go to the lounge then. Take your time." As Igor walked out of the kitchen, Andrei addressed Susan, urging her to take a seat. He emphasized the importance of maintaining confidentiality in their conversation as it pertained to their marriage and had no relation to Igor. Andrei reassured Susan that Igor played no role in their marital issues, questioning why she would think he would involve Igor in their affairs. However, Andrei pointed out that Susan had already involved Igor in the past when she started meeting him every Friday without his knowledge at their house. Andrei also mentioned that he had recently noticed her meeting with Igor on Mondays as well. Curious about the source of these claims, Susan questioned who had fed Andrei such false information and suggested they ask Igor directly while he was present. "I witnessed everything with my own eyes. It was the day of my accident, when I decided to come home after we were let off work due to an incident at the substation. The scene I saw was nothing short of shocking. The pain I felt from witnessing your dishonesty and betrayal was indescribable. I couldn't help but imagine what would have happened if your daughter had discovered the truth. It was that thought that forced me to leave before I did something I would regret. I wandered aimlessly and ended up at an abandoned bus stop, where I fell into a state of catatonia and nearly froze to death. During that time, I overheard your plans to be careful because the children were growing up. I also heard about Igor's desire to spend more time with you, claiming to have a great love for you. I suppose that's why he's here today. Remember what you say at work on Fridays when you go to meet your lover?" Susan knelt down in front of Andrei, crying and pleading. "I am so sorry, Andrei. Please forgive me." Upon hearing the sobs, Igor entered the scene. He gazed at the tearful Susan and asked, "Andrei, what have you done?" He approached Susan, but Andrew stepped forward, blocking his path, and spoke in a menacing tone, asserting, "Leave my home immediately. You are not welcome here. You betrayed my trust by pursuing my wife behind my back, and I will not tolerate it. You are no longer my friend. The fact that she is crying now means nothing. It's likely just her realizing that she has been caught. I have never laid a hand on her, and I won't start now. Since she is still my wife, if you don't want me to harm you, leave our apartment and disappear from our lives." Amidst her tears, Susan managed to utter, "Igor, please go away. We made a terrible mistake, and my actions nearly destroyed the person I love and care about." Igor left the house, and Andrei watched him drive away from the window. Turning to Susan, he spoke firmly, "You need to clean yourself up. As long as we're married, Igor is not allowed to enter this house. You must sever all contact with him. No calls, no texts, and no meetings. However, if you want a divorce, that's your decision. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow." Curious about Susan's intentions, Andrei added, "My decision will depend on how we talk and what you want for your life. It's important to figure out if our desires align." Susan headed for a shower to freshen up. Taking advantage of her absence, Andrei discreetly installed a spying program on her phone. He had previously utilized this program to monitor his daughter's activities, enabling him to track her location, listen to conversations, and read text messages. Recognizing that ending Susan and Igor's long-standing relationship might prove challenging, Andrei felt a need to maintain control over his wife. Andrei sat down with Katya in her room to help her with her homework when she arrived. Susan, having freshened up, prepared a delicious dinner for everyone. After dinner, Andrei and Katya enjoyed watching TV, and Susan, having put the dishes away, retired to her bedroom. The next day, Andrei decided to rest and stayed at home without any special plans. In the evening, he called Susan at work and suggested that they meet at the end of the day. Susan, though hesitant, finally agreed. As she left the office, she saw Andrei waiting for her and asked with some apprehension, "Are you trying to control me?" Andrei reassured her by explaining, "No, I just thought that as loving parents we should support our daughter by attending the finals of the competition she is competing in today. Do you have other plans?" Susan replied, "I don't have any plans tonight. But what is this contest that our daughter is participating in?" Andrew excitedly replied, "It's a basketball competition. And believe me, despite her height, she has an amazing shot." They arrived at the gymnasium where the entrance was free. Taking a seat in the stands, they observed the sportswoman warming up on the court. Katya noticed them from the hall and greeted them with a wave. The game began with mixed results, but Katya remained on the court throughout, demonstrating her value as a player. The final siren sounded, signaling victory for Katya's team. As the award ceremony took place, their daughter rushed over to them, brimming with happiness. Andrei suggested, "Katyusha, go change, and we'll head to a cafe to celebrate your victory." "By the way, where is your friend? Why didn't she come to watch the game?" Katya replied, "Dad, she couldn't make it. She's a swimmer and has her own competition today." Andrei then proposed, "Why don't you call her and find out how she did?" A few minutes later, Katya excitedly exclaimed, "Dad, Mom, I won first place." Her mother had accompanied her during the contest, while her father was once again at work. In honor of the celebration, they decided to have dinner in a cafe, playing the play of a happy family for the sake of their daughter. Despite the latent tension between the parents, Katya seemed not to notice anything. After dinner, they returned home, where Katya lovingly hugged and kissed Andrei and Susan, thanking them for a wonderful evening, and then went to bed. By 10 p.m., the light in her room had faded, so she had fallen asleep. Andrei told Susan that he wanted to surf the internet, using it as an excuse to get away and collect his thoughts alone, away from her. Susan reminded Andrei of their prior agreement to have a conversation, expressing her disappointment that they had not done so yet. Andrei acknowledged the business of their recent days and suggested that they prioritize their family night and temporarily set aside their problems. He proposed that they focus on enjoying time with their daughter and address their concerns in a more reasonable and calm manner the following day when they both had time to think things through. Susan agreed and apologized for the incident that had occurred. Andrei understood her remorse, but emphasized that they would discuss it further the next day. Reflecting on his marriage and family, Andrei decided that he would make an effort to negotiate with Susan. He recognized that marriage was a voluntary partnership between the two of them, and her input was essential. Nevertheless, he carefully considered different scenarios and their potential consequences. He had specific expectations, and if Susan failed to meet them or refused to act on them, he was willing to consider divorce as an option. However, Andrei's willingness to make concessions was influenced by their daughter. After seeking clarification from Christine, he became aware of potential complexities that could arise from a divorce, reinforcing his desire to find a resolution within their marriage if possible. In the early morning, the sound of Susan's footsteps entering the kitchen greeted Andrei's ears, accompanied by the inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Motivated by the energy around him, Andrei proceeded to have a shower and shave, emerging feeling refreshed. He promptly woke up Katya and reminded her, "Katyusha, it's time to rise and shine. You need to have breakfast and prepare yourself for school within the next 45 minutes. By the way, what would you like for dinner tonight?" "Dad, can you make pancakes with raspberry jam?" Katya enthusiastically suggested. Accepting her delightful idea, Andrei made his way to the kitchen where Susan sat at the table, savoring her coffee, already prepared for her workday. Eager to engage the whole family, Andrei proposed, "Let's plan a visit to the skating rink this weekend. It would be a great opportunity for some quality family time." Susan and Katya, who had entered the kitchen, seconded his proposal. The day dragged on with a monotonous routine. Andrei occupied himself with tasks around the house. After work, Susan arrived, having received a call from her daughter informing her that she would be late at a friend's house. Andre recognized it as the perfect opportunity to address the situation with Susan, as the future of their family hung in the balance, unsure which way it would sway by the weekend. He was prepared to fight for their marriage, but Susan would need to be on board. One thing he was certain of, he would never, under any circumstances, accept Susan and Igor pursuing a romantic relationship. After patiently waiting for Susan to finish her dinner, Andrew made his way into the kitchen and took a seat at the table opposite her. Firmly, he expressed, "I want to give you the opportunity to fully explain what transpired in our marriage. Understandably, this situation is completely unacceptable to me, especially considering he was someone I once considered my closest friend. I never expected him to act so horribly. I'm not interested in hearing any excuses or justifications. Save me from hearing about how he's a good person or anything that might serve as an excuse. As far as I'm concerned, Igor doesn't exist. Any defense of him will only bring this discussion to an end, and our marriage will be over." Andrew finished his introduction and allowed Susan a moment to process his words before pouring himself a cup of tea. He then continued, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. "In order for us to stay married and keep our family together, there are a few expectations I have that you will need to meet. If you cannot agree to them, I will be left with no choice but to proceed with the divorce." Susan interjected, expressing her love for him and her unwillingness to see their marriage come to an end. Andrew responded calmly, wanting to address the issue at hand. "I appreciate your love, but simply expressing it won't change the reality of the situation. If I hadn't discovered what happened on Friday, this could have continued indefinitely. I don't want our relationship to be filled with constant confrontation and pain. Faithfulness is a vital aspect of a committed marriage, and I have upheld it throughout our time together. I expect the same from you." Susan began shedding tears, deeply affected by Andrew's words. Sensing her emotions, Andrew quickly reassured her. "Susan, please don't cry. I am just acknowledging the truth of your infidelity and letting you know what I need from you if we decide to continue our marriage. It's important to have open and honest communication, even if it's difficult." He paused, giving Susan time to collect herself, showing his support and empathy towards her feelings. Andre took a deep breath before he spoke, expressing his desire to share his thoughts without interruption. He wanted to talk about the betrayal he felt on the part of Susan and Igor, emphasizing the enormity of their act. Andre considered Igor a reliable friend and Susan a faithful wife, whom he loved very much. However, their affair shattered his trust and caused him great distress. Despite the pain, Andre stated that he did not want their relationship to end. He wanted Susan to realize the consequences of their act, because their affair had jeopardized not only their marriage, but also Igor's marriage and lifelong friendship. As a result, Andre demanded that Susan sever all relations with Igor for good. "Do you want his wife to be informed about everything? Why wouldn't I? Especially since he plans to leave her. That's what he confided in you. Regarding our friendship, he doesn't seem to care about it. He seems to be minimizing the potential damage for himself. Do you believe he truly wants you? I have my doubts. It seems like he enjoys the thrill of the situation. As for Alina, I can't say what she will decide about him, but I don't want to get involved. Yes, I overheard him mentioning that he wants you to leave me, claiming that he has loved you for a long time and wants you to be with him instead. Yes, he did say that, but I wasn't going to give up on our relationship. In fact, I wonder if either of you thought about the consequences of divorce on our families beforehand. I have deep respect for your parents, and the thought of potentially losing the close bond we've had throughout the years pains me. We might lose friends along the way too. And what about our children? They will be caught in the middle, forced to live with either their father or their mother. The other parent will only be able to see them on assigned days determined by the court. So ultimately, the family will end up being sacrificed. Susan pondered over her husband's words as he leisurely sipped his cooled tea. The mere thought of forgiveness seemed impossible to her after his betrayal. Yet, a different idea crept into her mind. Perhaps she could salvage her marriage while still continuing her secret meetings with Igor. She resolved to be more discreet, understanding that saving her marriage was her utmost priority now. She also acknowledged that Igor's unpredictable earnings wouldn't be able to adequately support their family. With a deep breath, Susan mustered the courage to confess, "Andrei, I'm sorry for hurting you. It was a foolish mistake." Andrei inquired about the details, prompting Susan to recount the events from a year ago when he was away on a business trip. She explained that Igor had come to borrow the drill Andrei had promised him. Susan had been intoxicated that day, having celebrated a co-worker's birthday. Katya, their daughter, wasn't home as she was at a friend's place. It was during that vulnerable moment that the affair began, initially meeting on Fridays only once a month. To accommodate their meetings, Susan allowed Katya to stay longer at basketball practice or her friend's house. But what made Igor believe you were in love? I'm not sure. However, our meetings would pass quickly, and he desired more. I wanted to put an end to it. It was burdensome for me. Why didn't you end it then? I apologize, it held no significance for me. Andrei, I love you and I wish for us to work on our marriage. Please forgive me. I want to make amends. After she finished, Andrei responded saying, Susan, I need time to contemplate everything. I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days. I need solitude to reflect. Andrei paid a visit to his sister's place, where she and her husband Victor resided in their parents' expansive house. The residence offered ample space for everyone, including Andrei, who had a share in the house. Despite this, he firmly refused to relinquish his stake in the property. Gathering in the kitchen, Andrei shared the startling events that had unfolded with his sister and her husband. Dasha and Victor were taken aback by Susan's actions. Andrei then disclosed his plans for a divorce and implored them to keep it a secret. Later, he reached out to Master Edward, explaining his family predicament. Andrei expressed his inability to address the matter within a week's time. Master Edward reassured him, saying, Don't worry, take your time. I'll cover for you. Andrei had manipulated Susan into believing she had a choice and a say in their relationship, but he discovered that she had been deceitful about her feelings for Igor. Determined to seek revenge for his own pain and humiliation, Andrei contemplated ways to retaliate against Igor. However, he had yet to formulate any concrete plans and knew he needed to carefully prepare before taking action. With this in mind, Andrei decided to meet with Christina once more. Secretly, Andrei went to Christina's house and discreetly installed 2 spy video cameras in her bedroom, which he had borrowed from his sister's husband. Prior to meeting with Christina, he had also secretly recorded several conversations between Susan and Igor. These recordings made it clear that Susan and Igor were planning to continue their affair once things settled down. In these conversations, Igor professed his love for Susan once again, but at the same time, he uttered the following words. Susan, I'm ready to end my marriage for you if everything works out with Andrei. Igor, we've discussed this before. I love Andrei and I want to stay married to him, but I can't let you go either. I am ready to meet with you on the day we have set, which will come next month. It's too far away. Let's meet tomorrow when your sister picks up your car. What about Katya? We'll meet sooner then. Let's say at 3 p.m. and we'll have enough time for everything. Okay, that's settled. And please don't leave your car in our parking lot anymore. After reviewing the documents, Christina began preparing the divorce documents without referring to them. On the same day, Andrei visited Alina's workplace and told her everything. This news infuriated her. Later, when she overheard Igor and Susan talking, he asked, Do you happen to have a competent lawyer? Answering in the affirmative, Alina asked, When can we schedule an appointment with a lawyer? Andrei replied, Right now. I just need to inform the girls that I won't be able to come. Andrei took his daughter out of school, and they got into a difficult discussion, during which he tried to explain the situation to her. Susan and Igor couldn't resist seeing each other despite their agreement to stay apart. Little did they know, Andrei had planned to catch them in the act and recorded their meeting. It was a secret rendezvous since Andrei was supposed to be away and completely unaware. Encouraged by their previous encounter, Susan and Igor arranged to meet again on Friday when Andrei was visiting his sister. Unbeknownst to them, Christina, who had connections in the court, managed to convince the judge to have the summonses and accompanying statements delivered discreetly through a courier. She cunningly arranged for them to be delivered during Susan and Igor's meeting, creating a bombshell effect. The surprise delivery caught Igor off guard and suddenly made him question his intentions towards Susan. Frustrated and overwhelmed, he burst into a fit of anger, yelling at her, "You realize that if I marry you, my wife will take away the only car I know how to drive." Susan retorted, "Well, you're not very good at ferrying either." Fuming with anger, Igor headed home, only to be greeted by an unexpected surprise, his wife's brother. As soon as he spotted his car parked by the entrance, Igor instantly realized what this encounter entailed and decided not to go home. Fully aware of the implications, he took out her phone and dialed Andrei's number. Andrei picked up and Susan wasted no time in venting her frustration. "Andrei, I don't understand. You said you needed time to think and make a decision. And now I receive a summons and a statement of claim." Andrei reassured her, "Susan, that's not true. I didn't personally send you any legal documents. The court did. My lawyer just submitted the complaint on my behalf." Perplexed, Susan questioned, "But why? What's the reason behind all of this?" "Susan, it is clear that our relationship has come to a painful end. Your actions have demonstrated a lack of integrity and disregard for our commitment. Despite previous agreements, I now find them null and void. It saddens me to see you in this state, but it is important to acknowledge the consequences of your choices. Moving forward, I will retrieve my belongings from the apartment on Saturday. I kindly ask that you make arrangements to vacate the premises. Additionally, I would like to extend an invitation to our daughter to join me for pancakes, as it is important to maintain a sense of normalcy and stability for her during this time." On Saturday, Andrei snuck into the apartment, but to his surprise, Susan was not there. Instead, he found her daughter at home. Interested, he asked, "Why aren't you at school?" The young girl sighed and explained, "They painted the floors at our school with some awful smelling paint. It's so bad that they advised us not to come today." Understanding the situation, Andrei replied, "Okay, actually I was thinking of buying you pancakes this afternoon. Let me get my things and then we can leave." Interested in pancakes, she asked, "Where are the pancakes?" "They're at Aunt Dasha's." "That's where I live now," Andrei replied. Having settled this, he quickly packed his things, loaded everything into the car, and Katya jumped inside. Andrei decided to call Dasha to inform her about the pancakes. He asked, "Could you bake some pancakes for our arrival, please?" When they got to Aunt Dasha's house, pancakes were already waiting for them on the table along with a jar of raspberry jam. They sat down next to each other and started talking. Somewhere in the middle of their dialogue, Andrei felt the need to share something important with his daughter. "Katya, I want you to know that I will no longer live in our old house. I filed for divorce from your mother," Andrei confessed. "But please always remember that I will be there for you. You can contact me at any time or find me here." Nodding, Katya replied softly, "Dad, I already know. Mom explained everything to me." Andrew attempted to explain to his daughter, Katya, the reasons behind his decision to divorce her mother, Susan. He emphasized that he didn't want Katya to harbor anger or disrespect towards her mother. However, to Andrew's surprise, Katya shared that Susan didn't want a divorce and pleaded for her parents to reconcile. She believed that her father could forgive her mother and make things work. Andrew, feeling torn, responded honestly, "I don't know, daughter, but I'm afraid it's not possible." Katya then revealed that Susan had assured her that she would prevent the divorce from happening, and that if Andrew left, Katya would never see him again. Andrew, feeling a sense of sadness, comforted his daughter. "Katya, I'm sorry, but the issues your mother and I are facing are complicated. I promise to talk to her about it when I take you home. However, I don't believe anything will change on my end. Please understand that this has nothing to do with you, and I will always be there for you. You'll still see me regularly. I just won't be living together with you and your mother anymore." On the way home, Katya maintained a solemn silence. Andrei's anger flared, fueled by the fact that Susan had involved her daughter in grown-up problems. As they entered the apartment, they discovered Susan visibly worn out and fatigued. Andrei wasted no time and immediately questioned her. "I hope you're alone." "Andrei, I've already told you it's over," Susan replied wearily. "Besides, Igor had an accident last night. He was speeding and crashed into an abandoned bus stop. He suffered several serious injuries, including broken ribs, a skull fracture, and a broken arm. The accident has left him with other severe consequences, possibly resulting in permanent confinement to a wheelchair." Skeptical, Andrei probed further. "How do you know all these details? Did you visit him in the hospital?" Susan admitted, "Yes, I did. He has nobody else. His wife and daughter have abandoned him, and he's in an incredibly dire state." Seizing the opportunity, Andrei remarked curtly, "Well, now you'll have to find a replacement for him." Defiantly, Susan responded, "I don't need a replacement." Sensing Andrei's satisfaction, she added, "I see you're pleased. After all, he's your friend." "Was a friend, but that's not relevant. We are no longer together as a couple. When I brought Katya home, I need to understand why you involved the child in our marital issues. She is too young to comprehend the complexities of our situation. However, I want you to know that I will see you in court." During the initial hearing, a period of reconciliation was granted. 3 months later, the case proceeded to trial. Susan attempted to manipulate the situation, turning Katya against her father. Her lawyer requested an extension for the reconciliation period, but the judge denied this motion and continued with the proceedings. The judge also dismissed Andrei's claims that Susan was exploiting Katya. When Katya was asked about her preference, she expressed her desire to live with her mother while also blaming Andrei for breaking up the family. As a result, custody of Katya was awarded to Susan. The divorce request was approved. 30 days later, Andrei obtained his freedom. A month later, Katya reached out to him, requesting to be taken away from her mother. It turned out that Susan had been engaging in reckless behavior, often not spending nights at home. In a conversation with her friend, Katya had a realization about certain things. Katya apologized to her father, acknowledging that her mother had deceived her in a desperate attempt to salvage their marriage. There was another court hearing where Andrei made a difficult decision. He took his daughter and chose not to collect child support for Katya. He explained his reasoning by stating that he didn't want his daughter to have any debts to Susan. Unfortunately, Igor remained disabled for the duration of his life, but Andrei never visited him. In Andrei's eyes, Igor ceased to exist. Eventually, Igor was placed in a boarding home. Andrei would often pass by the old abandoned bus stop where he and Igor had experienced a near-death incident. Surprisingly, it remained standing, untouched by time. Occasionally, Andrei would run into Susan in town and notice the toll life had taken on her. Despite witnessing her struggles, he never felt pity for her. Susan's unscrupulous behavior towards him had caused her to suffer the consequences. As for Andrei's future, he never pursued marriage. On the other hand, Alina, Igor's wife, found happiness and remarried, embracing a new chapter in her life.